something we talk about on this show is, people who are relocating. What advice would you have for them that are trying to get here, that never lived here, they don't have any family here? How do you think they get the lay of the land to really understand what the Tampa area is all about?
First, when you're looking to relocate here, obviously do your research, consult with someone that's been here for a while, a realtor like myself or somebody else
somebody that you might know here
that's been here for a while, because Tampa is unique. It's not like in many other cities. One of the biggest deficiencies here in Tampa is something that we all know here locally. We just don't have a very, very good mass transit system.
Mm-hmm.
It's just, we have our buses, but we don't have a train. We don't have light rail or anything like that. So you need to know, like you were mentioning earlier, where you want to be, what's central to your lifestyle in terms of, okay, what do you want for your life? Is it good schools, or the location, proximity to work, commute to work? If you live in Brandon, are you going to be commuting to downtown, or vice versa? Or do you want to be near the beaches? Because if you live all the way out in New Tampa and you want to be a beach bum every few days,
it's a hike.
That's not going to happen.
Yeah.
It's going to be a good hour and a half to get from New Tampa out to...
And it might be exciting driving to the beach, but driving home from the beach is where it really kicks in.
Exactly. So I always tell people, let's look at the initial consultation. I just bring out this giant map, either in person, or if I do a virtual consultation over Zoom or something, I just bring up Google Maps.
Mm-hmm.
This is Tampa Bay. These are the different areas that you're going to be looking at. This is the type, from what you're telling me, this is the type of house that you want. This is where these houses are. Now, how is that going to fit to your lifestyle? What is your lifestyle? Because then we can start looking at different areas based on your lifestyle. If you want to be near downtown, if you want to go watch the lightning 20 times a year, okay, let's figure out where you want to be. Mm-hmm. Or if you want to be at the beach, like I said, if you want to go down to Anna Maria Island, if you want to go to St. Pete Beach, you want to go to Indian Rocks Beach, where do you want to be there at a certain time? Or do you work in West Shore and want to live somewhere else? So we go through all those variables to try and make that process as smooth as possible.
Yeah.
And make the lifestyle as easy as possible.
Mm-hmm.
Because no one wants to be in traffic.
No.
That's not something you
just
enjoy.
kind of accept it. And, every big city has the traffic problem. It is what it is, Until they ban cars completely, we're going to have cars. We're going to be in traffic.
Exactly.
What is your take on the Florida housing market right now?
It's still booming. It's booming. It's not like it was a year ago.
Frenzy. It's not a frenzy.
Mm-hmm. But it's still moving because people are still moving to Florida. People were still moving to Florida before COVID.
Yeah.
It was happening.
We've always been a destination state.
COVID just lit the fire on Florida. Right after COVID, everything just stopped for a while, for a couple months, and then the machine started back up again. And by the end of 2020, I had my best year because things just went absolutely insane. But the majority of my customer base for buyers, I had customers from New York, New Jersey, Pennsylvania, Illinois, Indiana, California. Less so here. There weren't a lot of local people just selling and buying. Mm-hmm. Those people moving in because they wanted to get out of the Northeast. They wanted to get out of high tax states, political reasons, whatever the case may be. They wanted to move to Florida because of the weather, the no state income tax, everything that Florida has to offer. The fact that you don't have to keep an ice scraper in your car, for winter. Mm-hmm. Various reasons.
Did you get a taste of that when you were in Illinois?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
2 years. I remember one morning waking up and the air temperature was -7.
It does not compute.
Wind chill was a lot more. For someone that lives in Wisconsin, like my wife is from Wisconsin, she laughs at -7. But -7 for a Florida boy, that is... No.
Yeah.
That's not happening.
That's the freezer. That's colder than the freezer.
At that point, I started making plans in the back of my head. I think I need to move back to Florida.
Mm-hmm. Wow.
But it was interesting. I appreciate what that area offers because you don't get the change of seasons down here like you do up there. But I wouldn't trade Florida's lifestyle for anywhere because you can do anything you want basically 12 months out of the year here. Mm-hmm. We have our fair share of issues,
Yeah, I've said before that it sort of gives you a more usable year outside. It almost gives you more time back because you're not stuck.
Yeah.
And I know people like to play in the snow and, do snow sports and things like that, but that's fun to do on vacation or when you go there for that purpose. But when you have to live in it and drive in it and shovel it.
But it's a fine line as well. I've always said this, especially with the water sports that I do. When I lived up north in the Midwest, you knew that you had a finite amount of time until the weather got to the point that you couldn't do those activities anymore. That's why up north they have music festivals every weekend in the summer. They have things going on because then come September, October, November, you're done. Down here, there's a fine line, and sometimes I've seen it. You get a little complacent. I can do that next week.
Yeah.
Oh, I can do that next month.
Yeah.
And then it never happens.
That's a good outlook. That makes sense.
So enjoy it, but take advantage of the time.
What speaking of Florida, and it's still quote unquote booming. What do you tell people, or what do you think, or what kind of advice do you have when people say that they're waiting on the market to crash or they're waiting on house prices to fall before I'm not going to buy a house in this market? Like, what's your advice to people?
Just look at the historical trends on pricing. It's always, whenever there's been a dip, there's been another rise and another dip. The dip almost never is as deep as the next rise. So you're always going to go up. So always look at what your goals are in terms of acquiring or purchasing a property, and look at the market. Like I was just having a conversation with one of my other customers this morning, that they're looking to acquire a property. And I'm like, listen, the market right now is changing. Obviously, interest rates are not what they were this time last year, that you could have gotten an interest rate at 3.5%, 3%. Now you're looking in the 6.5%, 7% range. But Florida is still a destination. People are still moving here. Florida is going to be a little bit more insulated from the rest of the country versus in terms of any dip that does happen in the economy. But look at what your overall goals are. I would say if you're looking to make a move just to make a move, make sure it's more of a long-term plan. Don't just buy, if you're looking to buy a house that may be slightly above what you would consider purchasing, and it's going to be just a temporary move for maybe a year or so, let's think about that. Let's talk about what could happen there. Or if you're looking at this as a long-term play, if you're going to hold on to it for the next 10, 15 years, you're going to be in excellent position because Florida is just going to continue to appreciate. Some people disagree with me, but I see Florida real estate prices mirroring or a few years behind, but what California is.
Yeah, and California's been like that for years.
Yeah.
Their property values have been through the roof. San Francisco, San Jose, those have always been like just crazy for little condos, like a 400 square foot condo, $800,000. And that was even years and years ago, we'd see that kind of thing. And I agree. I think they don't make new waterfront property.
No.
They don't make new coastline. And that's what draws people here. And I think that's when it's going to continue to do it. And there's still a whole lot of land left to develop. And like if you go east of, if you drive east of Hillsborough on Highway 60, it very quickly turns into nothing.
Yeah.
And it's like there's so much opportunity there for the future. And I can just see it go and go and go.
Oh, yeah.
Now, is it a good thing that we want it to be like California? Do we have a choice? Like I don't want the traffic. I don't want the population. I don't want the congestion. But, as far as an investment standpoint goes, I think you're right. And, another thing that I think about is I feel like people have a skewed opinion on the way the market works because they remember 2006, 7, 8 when the bottom fell out. And I think a lot of people have a memory of that and they feel like that's going to happen again. Or this is what happens to a real estate market. It crashes through the floor sometimes. But historically, it doesn't. That was I want to say that it was an anomaly. I hope it was. I can't tell the future. I'm not a fortune teller. But
we don't know what could happen in the geopolitical world.
Exactly.
Something that could happen over in Europe that might affect here, or in Asia that might affect us here. We don't have that crystal ball.
Yeah.
But in terms of how the market trends have been for the last 50 years, just go back, do your research.
Yeah.
It's like the stock market. People our age, if the market crashes tomorrow, we're not going to pull our money out of the stock market, because then you realize the loss. You're going to hold on to it.
Yeah.
Ride the
Let
wave.
it come back.
Let it come back. And that's where you got to just don't panic and just plan it out. And more times than not, you're going to make the right decision. And Florida real estate is typically very safe. You can't guarantee anything, but it's typically very safe.
Look to the successful people that you know, and how many of them do not own real estate, you know? And it doesn't turn into a timing thing. It turned, you know, they bought it in 1984, or they bought it in 2015, or they bought it in 2020 before things really took off. It's like, well, look at all that time, you know, and just name somebody successful that does not partake in either investment property or primary residence.